PLC to record what he was doing on the computer.
Yes, it is. It's actually a very useful technique to be able to do that. One thing you can do is to okay. Let me just make sure it's okay. This is recording from the right channel.
I just need to do one of those microphones like you have.
Yeah, yeah. Because I think it's really a good bargain for the price. The quality is really good. It doesn't have stereo or some of the really fancy features, but for lecture recording, you don't need stereo.
No.
But for voice recording, the quality is really quite it's really quite good.
I found it on Amazon for $40.
Yeah, that's about the going price for this kind of mic. You can also because it has a little clamp thing, you can clamp it onto a laptop computer or some other thing. So I just like it a lot. It's very compact, Okay, so what I'll do is I'm going to show you guys, how to use the new version of App Inventor in Windows in conjunction with an emulator, running Android. So this is going to run an emulator inside an emulator, so it's kind of interesting. But as far as you're concerned, you just have to understand this is actually just running Windows, an earlier version of Windows. First activate the. Oh no! No. That is odd. I never, have that problem before. Okay. New hardware wizard. No, go away. I think this. It should have access to everything that I have. So let me rescale everything a little bit so I can see the bottom here.
Is there drivers for QM?
Your unused icons. Well, as long as I can get onto the internet, I'll be fine. So we'll see whether we can go that far.
Oh, Tag.
Yeah.
The other day when you were trying to do this whole thing like through command line, there's a real simple way to do it.
Oh yeah.
In Windows. If you go to the folder where the command line tools are, if you hold down Control Shift and right click, one of the options will be open a command prompt, and it'll open it at that folder.
Okay. Not activated. Okay. That might be a driver issue.
It was prompting to install the Ethernet driver for a real driver, but for the emulator to access the network.
Yeah, but the problem with this emulator has always worked before. Oh,
I'm just looking for a textbook that may have been left here last night, but I'm not seeing it, so I will check the computer lab. Thank you. Oh my God, I sold it online already. It's on the black market somewhere.
And it has never reported this copy of Windows is never activated. So that's really odd as well.
Are you using a different emulator or a different version of the emulator?
Yeah.
And that's probably one of the reasons.
That's probably it. Yeah. Okay, let me log up and log into my other account. I don't think that should change anything. Since I don't have network access, I can't really show you guys how to do this from here. All right, let's see if I can do it I'll think about it, put it in my back burner for the time being. Okay, but in Linux, it's pretty easy. What you need to do is to go to a folder, where all the commands are installed, and I'm already there. It's under /user/google/app inventor, commands for app inventors, inventor, and the last one is a $, and then you go ahead and start the emulator. So you just /run emulator in this folder, and it will start the emulator first. And when it's doing this, I'm going to switch back to my app inventor, and I'm pretty much done with this particular program. I have added something that I have not talked about in this class, but it's one of the things that really should be addressed, and it will just complete your application in a very nice way. So let me just go to the screen that has that particular feature. I also added a help screen, which is currently blank. I didn't have time to actually type in the help at this point. But the most important part is this particular event handler. What happens when the end user press the back button on the device itself? Okay, on almost every Android device, let me see whether the emulator is up and running. This button here, that looks like a little U-turn. On some Android devices, it is an actual button, and on other Android devices, it is an on-screen button. So it depends on which device you're using, as well as the version of Android that you're using. But it always has the same symbol, which is a little U-turn symbol. Okay. The interesting part about this is the back button seems to have a default behavior, which is to go back to the previous step. Okay, if you're browsing the web, it will go back to the previous page. If you're on any type of app, it will go back to the previous step. And if you're already at the first step, and you press the back button one more time, it will exit the application. So that's the expected behavior, after we use, Android and Android apps for so long. However, that behavior is actually not inherent to the environment. It is actually something that you have to specify in your application. If you do not specify what you want to do with the back button, pressing the back button can potentially do nothing. Okay, so you actually can specify how you want to process the event of pressing the back button. The default behavior is to go back to the previous screen, but that may not be what you want to do. Okay, if you make a new screen, okay, let me just kind of toss this one away first. Okay, so I have this particular thing tossed away, and we'll go back to this application here, and also go back to the command line, because now it's time to start ADB. So I'll go ahead and check whether ADB can see the devices. It will start the server, and now it's seeing the device. So when there's only one device detected by ADB, it will automatically install to that device when you execute any command. If you have multiple devices attached, then you have to specify which one you're dealing with. Okay? Are there any questions about how to get to this step here? But this part is all getting recorded, and it doesn't matter whether you're running it in Windows or running in Linux. ADB is ADB. The behavior is the same in both environments. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is to basically show you what happens when I don't have a back button handler in the help screen, and the other screen already has a way to get to it. So if I go to screen main, it has a button. If you go to the designer, it has a button called help. When I click the help button, it will bring me to the help screen. Okay, and now let's go ahead and package it and download it to this computer. So this way I can install it remotely to the emulator. I also found one issue with App Inventor 2. I think it is the same with App Inventor 1, but it doesn't give me an error message, which is if you have two handlers for the same event, it doesn't like it. Okay, the compile process will basically terminate at about 20%, and then a message will pop up and say check the error message, but it doesn't give you any actual error messages. But I found that you can only have one handler per event.
When you go back from your help screen, you can initialize main screen.
You cannot.
You cannot.
Right, because it's only initialized once. When
No. You can, if you, like, you need to have one top. For example, this one you can initialize. This one you can. You stay on top. You can. I tried.
When you go into the help screen again, it does not initialize.
Help screen initialize, but when you go.
When the
back,
one before, yeah, because when you go back, it's not redoing the whole screen. It's actually just going back to where it was
but
before.
if you go back to screen one, you can initialize main.
Right. Yeah, it's only when a screen is created, when it's called from another screen, that the initialize is called. All right, so I got the APK file already downloaded, so now I can use ADB to install it. When you use ADB, you have to specify what you're doing. So install is what I'm doing. That's the word that describes the action. -R means I want to be able to reinstall something. Without the -R, if you already have the app installed, it will complain and say the app is already installed, and it will stop right there. Okay, if you specify -R, on the other hand, it means it's okay to reinstall. So if you already have the app installed, it will just go ahead and overwrite it, but without overwriting any storage, any data that you have already created. So TinyDB doesn't get affected when you say reinstall. It's just the app itself, the program itself, that is going to be reinstalled. And then you specify the location of the APK file. This time I downloaded it to my temp folder. So I will do a -R temp dbt diary card.apk. Press the enter key. It uploads the file first, which is really fast. And then the other part is the emulator, in this case, actually installing or unpacking the file. And this is actually faster than many of the other approaches that I find. Okay, now we can go back to the emulator itself, and the app is already here. Click it to start it. Okay. And I also changed the app a little bit. This is actually pretty close to finished. I will show you the code also later on. So let's click the help screen here. So, and when I click help, it brings up the help screen. When I press the back button, okay, it should go back to the previous screen because that's the default behavior. Okay, so without even specifying an event handler, the back button on the screen does something.
Yeah, but you can initialize this screen.
You mean this one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you go back, you can initialize.
You can. Well, you have
For
to
example,
do it yourself.
You have something in help, and you need to get updated and go back. You can trigger the.
You cannot trigger anything to happen when you're going back.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. You can, in a way, it's just a little bit harder. Okay, you have to embed the logic to something that you're watching. Okay, I'll show you guys how to do that too. Okay, so are there any questions about the default behavior of a screen when you press the back button? It goes back to the previous screen. Now, that may not be the behavior that I want in this particular screen, because let's say I'm partway done with my quick entry here. So I felt, okay, and then under felt, I say, I felt happy, and control the scale here, and I say, felt good that most of my students show up in class. Okay, so that's the reason why I'm happy. And let me go. Now this back button, is just hiding the keyboard. Cannot be intercepted by the application itself. So at this point, if I press the back button, or a normal user presses the back button at this point, what do you think is the intention of pressing the back button?
Go back to the last procedure to do that.
Maybe to change the feeling, right? Maybe to go back to the previous step of this process, but not to go back to the previous screen, which means you will lose all the entry that you have entered at this point. Okay, but that use of the back button cannot be automated. The Android environment doesn't understand that you are at a particular stage of the entry form here and understand, oh, you mean to go back to the previous stage so we can specify another feeling. Okay, that is something that is custom to the application itself. So if you do not implement your own event handler for the back button, what it's going to do is it will go back to the previous screen. Okay, it will give you back the screen with a red letter and warning and stuff like that, which is not a very good behavior. So that's why in your app, depending on what you're doing in the screen, you might want to consider, you probably need to consider implementing your own back button handling so that it just goes back to the previous step of whatever is in progress on that screen. Okay, so right now, I have already done that logic. So if I press a back button, it goes back to, felt here, so I can re-specify, how I'm feeling. Okay, but this is custom to this particular application. Your application may not behave in this particular way, so the back button, may need a different way of you may need a different way to handle the back button. Okay, now I also have the logic so that if I continue to press the back button, it backs up even more. It backs up to the first step in the process, and if I press it one more time, it backs me out of that screen back to the first screen. Okay, but that part is all done by custom code and not a default behavior that comes with the system. Are we doing okay so far with the main idea of why you need to have your own back button handler? Okay, so with that out of the way, we can now take a look at the code and see how I'm handling the back button. Yep.
How would we handle it for devices that don't have their own back button? Like they don't have a physical button and
the on-screen
design when they don't have a emulate or a on-screen one too.
The on-screen one should act the same way.
Though I haven't seen it, but I've heard many people talk about their device not having a back button or a virtual back button.
Mm-hmm.
So you would have to implement your own back button on screen.
No, you don't. All the Android environment itself will give you a back button. It will be at the bottom. It shows up on the screen itself.
Yeah, that's for the standard Android interface, but these customized devices that run Android, but they've changed the on-screen buttons and removed some.
Interesting. I have not encountered a device like that. Maybe that's because I rooted all my devices and installed CyanogenMod, so they all look the same with the proper back buttons. I haven't seen any devices like that, so I have to actually get one to test it and see what happens, or even is there a way to get the standard buttons back on the screen, so that it will work. The big question is, in those cases, what does it do when you're in a browser, in the default browser, and you press how do you go back to the previous screen in a browser?
Using the on-screen button within the program.
So everything is on screen?
Yeah. The app must be able to handle it.
Okay.
Visually.
I can address that, so we'll go. But thank you for letting me know, because I thought all Android devices has the system provided back button.
I thought it too until I was reading a development forum about a certain program, and the developer said not all devices have the back button.
Interesting. I know not all have the hard buttons, that do not change. Some actually has the button just as a part of the screen, but I thought that part is always provided. But apparently that is not true. Okay, but let's go to the blocks here, and I'll show you guys how to implement your own back button in cases like that. The back button implementation is actually fairly complex in this case, so I'll show you the code. It's down here. I just did this yesterday. Here we go. Okay, so this is my back button. Okay, if you look at, press the key here. When you look at this big block here, it is screen main dot back pressed. Okay, and it's really complex because I need to check what is the stage. Which stage am I in the form entry particular screen. So I have to see which one is visible, because that is one way for me to keep track of the state of the screen, so I know what is the previous state and how do I get back to the previous stage. So I would use one condition to see if the review button itself is visible, because if the review button itself is visible, that means I'm ready to go back to the main screen, because that's really there's an indication. If the list picker for today I something is visible, that means I'm already backed all the way up to the first stage of the entry, and I can now close the screen and go back to the previous screen. And you will later on see how to close as a local variable is used later on. And I have all this custom logic to make sure basically I can handle each possible scenario. Okay, so no matter which stage I'm in the form, I know how to back up to the previous stage of that process, which is very tedious. It's extremely tedious. Okay, and I was trying to think of a way to do this a little bit more cleanly, but I'm still thinking about it. There's no quick solution in App Inventor yet to do it. But if you can go all the way to the bottom here, I interpret the local variable to close. If toClose is true, then I'm going to store everything back to the TinyDB, and then I close the screen with a value. And in this case, I'm just returning an empty list. But in other cases, you can also return a list with all sorts of information. So the previous screen, can intercept that. Okay. Are there any questions at this point about how to write your own back pressed handler? Okay. It's really just an event handler. You can treat the back button as if it's just a regular button. Okay. So that means, in your case, when you describe there are, Android environments without an actual back button, what you can do, that's a lot of decibel. Did you do that? Did you make the baby cry? Apparently so. No, that was just, picking on you. I was asking, did you make the baby cry?
No, but I was trying to be polite and keep the door shut until she passed.
Ah.
At least I don't know if I did. I don't think I did.
Yeah, we could hear the scream all the way from here, even before the door opened. It's like, wow, that is really loud. Well, I guess, that's their survival instinct. They have to be heard. Okay, so instead of doing this, okay, what I can do is I can put all of this logic here. Okay, I can put this entire block into its own subroutine. Okay, I define the procedure to do it. So I can now call the procedure from this particular event handler, and also from a button that you basically put on the screen as quote unquote your own back button. So that's the other way to deal with going back to the previous screen. Okay, is that making any sense? The only problem is the app itself, I'm not sure whether it has a way to detect whether the Android environment is already providing a back button, because if that is the case, then you don't need another back button on the app itself. So that's the only thing I don't know whether it can be handled. But you can easily extract all this code into its own subroutine. In fact, I'll just go ahead and do it. So to define the procedure, I think we described it in Monday's meeting too. You go to procedures, and then you specify one of these two. Okay, one of these two is for both of these are for defining a new procedure, but you can pick one. Since I'm not returning any particular value, I pick the first one. So just drag it out here, and then you name it accordingly. You can just say back pressed, okay, because that's going to be handling what if the back button is pressed. And I can just drag and drop this whole block over here, and from here I just do a call. Okay, I'm going to invoke the subroutine, so it's a call, and I just call the subroutine I just defined, and that's it. So now I can have multiple handlers to deal with what if I want to go back one step. Yep.
You can put a button and make it invisible.
Right.
And you can have a setting persistent.
Right.
TinyDB.
Right.
So
yep. But this is how you can handle the situation where the system doesn't give you a back button.
Exactly.
Yep. All right. So any questions about this process? So depending on the complexity of your application, this back button implementation can be very simple because you can say, there's nothing else, to back up to on this screen, so I'll just go close this screen and back up to the previous screen. That may be appropriate for your application. Or maybe your application or the screen that you're designing has multiple steps. Okay, so when you press the back button, you have to back up to the previous step of the process, which means you have to implement your own logic to back it up. Okay. Are there any questions at this point?
If the user were to hit home, and then would the application still stay in memory, or would it only stay relevant portions of it?
I think that depends on the version of Android. With my phone, the app is actually still running. So when I go to when I quote unquote start the app again, it just brings me back to the screen or the state that I was in. In fact, let me just double check to make sure that's the case, because sometimes I do not remember things correctly, but I think that really is the case. So let me just double check to be sure. Okay, so I'm going to use my own application here, and I get past the first screen, I hit the home button, and then I start the app again. Oh, it's starting from the first screen, so it's actually not preserving the app. I think, okay, let me try another way. If I long press the home key and then select the application, then it preserves it. So if you start the app from its icon, then it is starting from scratch. But if you use the home key and long press the home key to select the task, then it just goes back to the task where it left off. But with earlier versions of Android, I'm not sure whether the behavior is the same, because I don't think they have the long press home ability in version 2.3. So that means, when you press the home key, it probably will kill the app and you're starting from scratch again. We can, yep.
I've noticed on my version 4.2.2 that even you can start the app again, and most of the time it'll just resume where it was before. I think it was a native feature that was added.
Okay. Yep. Because in this one, when I press the that's the menu key. The home key brings me back to the home, and if I start the app again, it starts from the beginning. But this is an earlier version of Android. This is, I think, version 2.3. I think the emulator uses version 2.3. In fact, I can double check that too. So I can go to menu, go to settings. I haven't seen this for a long time. Okay. Oops. New. Back.
Yeah, you have to click and drag up.
2.2. Yep. Well, there are still people using version 2.2 of Android out there. So when you write an app, you have to kind of keep that in mind as well. All right. So any other questions? Okay. So let me address your question. Okay. So the question is, if I start a new screen, okay, and I'm doing something with a new screen, and it needs to send something back to the previous screen, how does the previous screen know that, oh, okay, the new screen has got something for you? Okay, so that's the question. Okay, does everybody understand what the question was? Okay, you use a screen, you start a new screen.
For example, settings.
Hmm?
You use settings, and you make changes, and you want to go to the main screen, and changes immediately to take effect.
Okay, so that's a good question.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and take a look, how we can do something like that. Okay, so right here, in this particular app, I have main, and main at this point doesn't send anything back to the first screen. Okay, so let's go to the first screen here, and we'll take a look at the handler. This is not a handler, excuse me. I think I just dragged it out of the context here. There we go. Okay, so this is the event handler for the only button on this particular screen, when this button is clicked, it just gets me to the main screen because I want to make sure that people understand, the disclaimer of this application. They have to click, I understand in order to proceed. Okay. So the question now is, what if I'm coming back from the main screen and want to send something back to this particular screen so that, there's something to put on this particular screen. All right, so the first thing I want to do is to go to the screen that I'm coming back from. Let's say that's the main screen here, okay? And so what we'll do is we'll say when we are closing.
Can you use the help screen from help screen to main screen?
From help screen to main screen, we can do that. Okay, let's do that. Okay, so now let's go to the help screen, which is the last one. Okay, so screen 1 starts the main screen starts the help screen. Okay, so this is the help screen. I don't have anything to do in the help screen, as it is right now, but I'm going to send back something to the screen that started me. Okay, so this is what I'll do. So I'll go ahead and implement my own back button. Okay, so when back pressed, I'm going to now specify my own thing. Now the other thing you have to remember is, if once you put an event handler like this in your app, now it is up to you to implement what happens when you press the back button. If you leave it the way it is, which is specifying nothing, when back is pressed, it will never go back to the previous screen because it doesn't close this screen anymore, which is the default behavior. So as soon as you put in the event handler, the default behavior goes away. Is that okay? Does everybody understand the implication of just by putting the event handler into your app, it changes the default behavior? Is that okay? All right. So now let's go ahead and specify, I want to send back something. That's under control. And in control, you have to go, close to the end here. I'm not closing the application, so definitely don't want to go there. We are closing a screen with a particular value. Okay, so there we go. And when you close a screen with a value, the result can be anything, okay? Which is really flexible because now you can reply with a list of pairs, which is really helpful because that allows you to send back, like any number of items, back to the other screen, okay? So in this case, I just want to do something real simple, okay? So let's just, send back maybe a text message, okay? So the result can be just plain text here. So I'll just say, this is coming back from the help screen, because the whole purpose of this experiment is just to see if we can catch when the other screen is closing and the main screen says, oh, okay, the screen that I started has just closed and it's sending me back something. I need to do something about it, okay? So we go back to the main screen here, and then we get to the bottom part, and if anything, it's going to be an event handler for the screen itself. So we go through all these items here and see which one may be the one that we want. Okay, back pressed, no. Error occurred, no. Initialized, no. Other screen closed, maybe that's it. Okay, so we'll drag and drop this one here. Now, when you look at this event handler, it looks a little bit different from back pressed and many of the simpler ones because it has arguments. It has two arguments. It has, the first argument is other screen name, and then another argument, the second argument is result. Okay, so this event is triggered when this screen is reactivated because you just came back from another screen. Now, it may be because the back button was pressed, it may be some other reason, okay? But whatever the reason was, you're now getting back to this screen. Okay, so what I'll do is I'm going to use a notifier to help us understand what is being sent back here. So I'll go to my notifier and just print a message. So let's see, what is the quickest way to do it?
Show message dialog.
Show text.
No, show message.
Show alert. Well, show alert is pretty easy. Okay, maybe we'll go ahead and pick this one here. Okay. In the message area, I'm going to use a kind of longer text here just to show what I'm getting back. Okay, so I'm gonna use a join here. And we'll have a few more items. Okay, 5 items here, just to make it read, nicely. Okay, the first one is back from screen, and then put a space here. And then the next one is really just the name of the screen itself. Oh, okay, that's not what I want, because I want to use a local variable.
Okay.
And the way to do it is variable get, and then you specify which variable or argument you're trying to get. In this case, it's other screen name. So we go to there's not enough space here to look through the whole thing. Oh, just barely. Nice. Okay. So this will give me the name of the screen that I'm coming back from. And then the next item is just regular text. And I'll say, and the result is space. And then we'll go get the result. Okay, so now we use another variable get. And hopefully there's enough room. No, no! I just ran out of space to get the thing that I need.
You have to move the whole
Just
thing
copy.
out.
Copy and paste one of those and move it.
Just click the white screen and drag up.
Nope, it doesn't let me drag up anymore.
Then you need to place something below to
Yeah.
have more
Yeah,
space.
copy and paste it, and it'll bring it down.
Okay, maybe if I do something like this. Yep, just gave me some extra space. Give me some extra space. There we go. Just barely. Well, it is a smaller screen, okay? If this were a bigger screen, I would not have this problem. I was doing this last night with my 1080p screen, and because I got so many global variables, it's still, it was still, really close to the bottom, and many times I have to actually scroll it to get to display the entire list, because the local variables or arguments, they are at the last portion of that list. I think this is okay for now. I just put 5 items here just in case I want to close the message itself. Now we can specify the title. So we'll just go ahead and say another screen closed, and then the button text is just okay. Alright, so this is my little app here, to see if I can catch, the next screen closing. Now, it is important that you also process this using other screen name, because if this particular screen can start 3 other screens, it's the same event, okay? It doesn't matter which screen comes back to you, it is still the same event handler. So that means in the event handler itself, you have to use a conditional statement to check the name of the screen that you're coming back from, and then you can process the information differently. Okay, because if it's coming back from a help screen, maybe there's nothing to process. If it's coming back from a setup screen, then you have to do something, because it might change the behavior of the screen. Okay, it might change the background color of the screen or whatever. Okay, so it all depends on which screen you're coming back from. So in reality, you have to check the name before you decide what to do with it. But in this case, we're just testing it, so this is fine. Okay, we'll go ahead and
When you use the get for the variable and bring up the list of variables, wouldn't just typing the first part of its name go to the item?
to either a set or get. Yep.
So when you click on the arrow and bring it down the list, start typing the beginning of the variable name. Shouldn't it go to the first item that goes to it?
It works for globals, but for whatever reason, it doesn't work for locals.
Yes.
I kind of tried that already. We can give it another try here.
It's like when you click on.
Oops. Oh, I just press escape key when I need to save it. That's okay. Okay, let me see if I can get a result here. See, if I just type result, it doesn't list result.
Oh, I mean, since your list was so big, when you click on get a result there, then start typing one of the names.
Nope,
No?
doesn't work either.
Okay.
We can request a feature. Okay, so now let's go back and do this again. I closed it accidentally. I pressed the escape key when I really should not be escaping. I showed this app to one of my colleagues in the CIS department, and she is getting a degree, a master's degree in psychology, and she, with the intention of helping people, and she was really interested in this app, thinking it's a good tool. Right, so place, go back to the command line. Yeah, it's multiple steps, but it's not really. When you're really programming, at some point, the overhead of downloading and reinstalling the app, should not be a significant portion of your time anymore. Okay, so go back to the app, go back to the Android system, start the app again. Help. Okay, so here's the help screen. Doesn't have a single thing. So we press the back button here, and what we should do is, what we should see is we should get back to the main screen with the notifier telling us something about it. Okay, so let's see whether that's happening or not. Yep, that's exactly what's happening. The dialog box pops up. We are getting back from the screen with the name called screen help, and the result is empty. It's not getting the result. That is interesting. It's not getting the result. And let's take a look here. I'm getting result.
Is that the same result?
I think so. This is the only result. Let's see. Yep. I don't have a global variable called result, so this has to be the result. Okay, let me try something else, because under control, if you go under control, you go to this part here. There's also another way to get, no, I guess not. It only gets the start value for this particular screen, but it doesn't have a way to get the result from the other screen. So result is back, but it's not what I think it should be.
And we're closing the other screen, not just navigating from it.
Well, we can double check. I thought that's what it did. Close screen with value, and I specify a result.
I tried to open another screen, so I got the idea.
Okay. Yeah, but it's not.
I used the wrong one.
Oh, okay, I see.
When you
with text.
When we use open another screen.
Oh, okay.
From help screen.
Oh.
You can trigger.
Okay. But it still should be passing this, result back, in this case, and it's not.
For me, it's okay.
Getting it.
I save in TinyDB.
Okay, you can use TinyDB for that purpose. Okay, all right, that's good. Okay, so are there any questions at this point? Because I have just illustrated, how to deal with the back button. Okay, depending on your app, it can be very complicated. Or I can just say, oh, I'll just use the default behavior to close the entire screen to go back to the previous screen. So it's entirely up to you. If you have a setting screen, like a setup screen, and you just say, oh, we'll use the default behavior, all the settings would be lost, because the two screens do not communicate at all without your specific code. So I think, yep.
How do you get the result back from the screen?
That's what we are trying to figure out. I mean, it has to work, to a certain extent. I'm just not, getting it to work yet. Okay, let's try a different data type. So maybe we'll try something even harder. Okay, we'll try a list. So we go ahead and make a list, and in the list we just put some simple items here. Okay, so we'll say result, and the result is a number. Okay, it's a 0. There we go. Okay, so instead of using just a string to return, we're returning with a list. And then we go back to main, double check this code, and see whether we are doing it correctly. And I think we're doing it correctly.
It says when screen main closes.
No, when screen main dot other screen closed.
Oh.
So it's a screen other than screen main closing. We know that this code got triggered because we saw the dialog box.
Yeah.
It's just that we also got the screen correct because it did display screen help, and the only part that is not working is the result. We're not getting the result back. I'm going to just to be sure, I'm going to remove the additional item, which really should not matter, but just in case. So we'll give it another try. Package for phone.
So you just whenever a screen starts, no matter which one, it just grabs whatever data that is saved in the database.
Say that again?
Can you say just save everything in the database whenever you want to actually store it, and then whenever a screen starts, just grab from the database, like so it doesn't need to know if another screen is going to close or not. Just whenever a new screen opens, it'll just grab data from the database.
You could do that, but when the other screen closes, you still need to know that you have to start everything from the database.
You can use a timer, but it's not.
No, well, that's not a good idea because now it's timing based. Yep. Okay, so place it. Now this is the other thing that you should observe is when you're already in the app that you're updating, Android knows to close the app first, and then it will do the update. Okay, so we'll observe this. Okay, so we have the emulator running on this side, and we are going to update on the other side. And you'll see what the emulator is going to do. It closes the app first, and then it reinstalls the application. So if you're already running the app that you are reinstalling, then you have to kind of keep that in mind, because when it closes the application, it doesn't save anything in that case. So now we restart the app. Click help. Click the back button. And it's still showing the result is, maybe it's just out of space to print it.
One thing I noticed is when you clicked on help, it looked like that dialog box came up immediately when you pressed it. So maybe it doesn't have a value when it displays it.
Yeah, that's a good point. When I click it right away,
Yeah.
it popped up a box already. That's interesting. Okay, the question is it actually showing?
Yes.
It is running, it's showing screen help.
It's showing the message first before going to the screen.
That is interesting. Good observation, good eyes, you caught it. Okay, so why is it triggering the event when it is not time to do it? Okay, let me see if there are other options to catch it. Okay, other screen closed is the only one. I mean, that's the only event handler that remotely match what we are. Okay, event raised when another screen has closed and control has returned to this screen.
Bug.
Maybe it opens that prior to whatever's going to happen and then just keeps it in the background. That's how they wrote it. Wouldn't really make sense.
That is really strange because it doesn't make any sense, because otherwise you won't be getting the result back. I mean, that's the whole point of doing this, right? I tested this with version 1 and it worked. Okay, I can pass a list, not just one variable, but I can pass a list to the next screen.
Can you try your list? Pass your list.
This is already a list.
Right.
Yeah, in the other screen, I'm already passing a list back to this screen. It's already a list like this.
But that really doesn't matter.
If the timing is off, right? If the event got triggered at the wrong
No, I
time.
mean the list you pass by reference.
Well, the issue right here is when you click at the help, the other screen closed is triggered. So it's already displayed before you even get to that screen.
That's crazy.
Does it have anything to do with this screen having nothing? I don't think so, but we can easily change that, right? I mean, just put a label here and say, okay, I need some help. Okay, all right. I don't think that really is the issue, but we'll give it a try. Because this should have worked, closed screen with value, and let's double check this one too. Okay, let's double check this particular screen and see what we can do with it. We can see what can be set here. Okay, we have title, scrollable, screen orientation, open screen animation, close screen animation. None of these has to do with what we're dealing with here. And under control, when we close a screen, we have close screen with value, and close screen with plain text, and with text. We can give that a try, but I don't think that's the issue because the event is raised before the screen is even closed. So whatever code we specify on this side should have no impact. I mean, it really is, when is that event, raised? That is the issue. Okay, we'll close this app all the way and then start it again and see if the behavior is the same. Okay, so we close it all the way, go back to here, click I understand. It's the same thing. It popped up that dialog box like right away. Okay, so I think I have to send a bug report to MIT.
That's a pretty major bug.
Yeah, but this is in alpha.
Yeah.
This is actually in alpha stage. Alright. Well, I'll do one more thing, because what I want to do is to try this app on my phone, just to see whether a newer version of Android, behaves differently, because it might have something to do with it. I don't think so, but, we'll give it a try, okay? Under my temp folder, and drag and drop it here. It has one already. Was it dragging in the opposite direction? Here we go. It should have asked me whether I want to overwrite it or not, but it did not. Okay, so now I have to do it on my own phone.
So it automatically keeps different versions of the file.
Oh, it does?
Yeah.
Because when I use the desktop app, it actually asks me, it confirms with me, do I want to replace it? So the behavior is different, whether I'm using the web interface or using the app itself to do the update. Because I have the actual app installed at home. Right, install. It's the same way. It's the same, it displayed the dialog box, just an instant before displaying the help screen. So the event is raised, before its time. Okay, so that means with App Inventor 2, the only way to pass results back is to TinyDB, because there's no way I cannot get this part to work. Let's try one more thing. Just one more thing, which I don't think is gonna have any impact is I don't even try to specify my own back button handler, but that really should have nothing to do with it. I mean, I don't think it's gonna matter at all. Okay, what a bummer. Okay, now we want to look into how do we report bugs. Okay, so go to feedback, and thank you for taking the time to test this new version. But your feedback, bug report, and ideas are vital, blah blah blah, and you put it here. Now you want to read the whole thing because on some open source projects they have specific ways to turn in bug reports, okay, and suggestions to go somewhere else. Especially with Debian or anything that is a little bit more technical and professional, if you put your message at the wrong place, it doesn't get to the people who need to read it. So in this case, this is the right place. So I'll go ahead and put an entry there. I'm doing this in class, because I want you guys to basically do the same thing, or understand, how open source projects work. Okay, because without the feedback from people who are actually using it, they don't know what to fix. Okay, and since the software itself is free, this is the least we can do to kind of help it. Because when App Inventor 2, get all the bugs fixed and get feature added, who's going to benefit? All of us, right? Whoever's going to use it. So that's why we should go ahead and do this. Summary. Okay. The other screen closed event is raised before the other screen actually closes. In fact, the event is raised as soon as the other screen is, I just want to use the right term here, opened. I wonder whether it has to do with this start value here. I really don't think so, but that's the only thing that can link to the behavior of that thing. So maybe I'll just change it here and do something different. It's cool. And when you describe a problem, you have to be as specific as possible. So you want to say open another screen with start value. Okay. With open another screen with value, and specify an empty list as value. Okay. So this is a little bit more specific than just to say, the event is raised at the wrong time. Okay. Alright, operating system is Linux, browser is Chrome. Oh, I just put it at the wrong place. That's the summary, description.
I think you should reverse it.
Yeah.
Put it down there. Just say.
Put it here, and then the other part is
The very trimmed down version, like you just said.
Getting result from a closed screen doesn't work. Okay, so that's the summary, because that's what we're doing. That's what we are getting. Or I should say, other screen closed event raised as soon as other screen is opened. Okay, I think that's better. Okay, and then we just submit. Never submit passwords through Google Forms. All right. Thank you for your help. All right. Okay, so we're gonna give it one last shot here, just to see whether, I'm just trying to help them diagnose the problem and see if, the different ways of doing the same thing might make a difference. Okay, because that's one of the skills you need to use when you're troubleshooting something. So this is opening screen
you
help.
Want to try open another screen?
I will try open another screen without the value. Okay, because this one is simpler, so hopefully, being simpler means, it doesn't, it may behave differently. So we want a screen help here, and do the whole thing, download it, and reinstall it. This is also a good time to kind of think about your own projects, because I have pretty much given you guys, most if not all the tools, that is in the scope of this class. And this is week 8, so it's a good time to get started with your own project, so we can incorporate as many of these concepts as possible into your own project. All right, saved, install. One more try. I don't think it changes the behavior, but if it does, I can at least report that. Nope, doesn't change the behavior. Okay, so it doesn't work. It's because the event is raised at the wrong time, so there's no way I can get the result back. Okay, the event is raised as soon as the screen is opened. Well, that's way before I have a chance to pass any information back, so that's why.
Maybe it's thinking the other screen also includes the screen you're on right now.
Okay, the other. Now, there's one more thing to check. Okay, I know you guys are getting tired and go like, why are we spending the time in class, doing this? Well, it's troubleshooting. Okay, it is still troubleshooting, right? We're trying to figure out, what it is, and is there a way to get around it? Okay, because you cannot just say, okay, fix this in a tool, and then before it's fixed, I'm not going to do anything else. Okay, a lot of times you have to understand the limitations of the tools and try to figure out a way to get around it. Okay, I'm suspecting that it is double triggering the event. Okay, but the first event is hogging the dialog box. So the second event, doesn't get processed because the event handler is still busy when the second event, is triggered. Do you guys see what I'm saying? So there's definitely a bug in App Inventor. When it opened the other screen, it immediately triggered a screen closed event. But I'm suspecting when I actually close the second screen, another screen closed event is actually triggered. That one includes the feedback or the return value. But because the first event is still occupying the screen, using the dialog box, when the second event got triggered, it basically just runs into a roadblock. It's like, oh, somebody is already, occupying this spot. I don't give a chance to process, to get processed. So I'm going to test that theory and see whether that really is the case or not. Okay, so I have an idea of how to do it already. I just want to see if you guys want to, kind of share your idea of doing it. Yep.
Update a label.
Update a counter, right? Just a counter and a label, so we can reflect.
Use a global variable.
Or with a global yeah, you can use a global variable, but the label is sort of like a global variable itself too. So we'll go ahead and try that technique and see if we can identify whether it's just a double trigger thing, which means this is all kind of it's not going to impact any real application because it doesn't have a notifier in the middle. Okay, so we'll go ahead and design the screen here a little bit differently. Go back to the designer, and there's already a little debug message that is hidden. So we'll go ahead and use this one here for debugging purposes. Go back to blocks. And over here, we'll reset the counter. Go to, okay, we say remember the labeling. LBL. I think it's LBL. What's the name? It's not log entry. I think it's data. Let me double check. Yep, LBL data. Okay. LBL data text, and we want to set it to 0. Oh, actually, the quickest way to specify 0 is just 0. That usually works. All right. Now, instead of handling other screen closed like this, we will take this block away for the time being, and then I just want to do the counter thing, so we'll go ahead and use, let's see, okay. LBL data dot text. So we'll start with a set here, and then we'll specify a plus operation. And then we'll specify LBL data.text on one side, and specify 1. It worked when I was home.
I think you may need to like 1, 2, 3.
Hmm? Sorry?
I think you may need to type like 1, 2, 3 to bring up that data type. And set it.
No, it was 0. I was I was just specifying 0 when I was home, and it worked. Okay, so this will just increment the counter when I close the other screen. So the way it works right now, what I'm suspecting is it will increment to 2 when I come back from the help screen, because it's actually double triggering that event. All right, so let's see. There's a error here. Oh, because it's not in the right block. That's fine. We'll toss this one. I mean, we don't need it. So I'm not debugging my own code, I'm actually debugging App Inventor at this point. How many people enjoy the debugging process more than the development process? In many ways, I actually enjoy the debugging process a little bit too. Maybe about the same, I wouldn't say it's a lot more or a lot less, about the same as actually writing code.
Why?
I just like problem solving.
I like to write unit tests.
Oh, you do? Nice. We need people like you. We need more people like you. Alright, so it's almost there. Alright. So we got the file. We reinstall the app. Go back to the emulator, and then we'll give it a try. There are many ways to indicate whether it's double triggering. This is just one way to do it. It might complain about data type problems, so this is testing multiple things at the same time. Yep. Did you guys see the 0 just turned into a 1 right before the help screen showed up? Now the question is, what happened when I close the help screen? Is it going to increment to 2, or is this going to stay at 1? If it stays at 1, that means there's no way we can get any result back, okay? Because it doesn't get triggered again when the screen actually closes. If it increments to 2, that simply means it should not have been triggered the first time, but the second time it triggers is probably still okay.
I think it's 1 will stay 1.
Well, we'll see. We don't know, okay? And it stays as 1, so that means we are stuck, okay? There's no quick and easy way to fix it, because this is an App Inventor engine issue and not something that we can fix. Okay, well, that's good to know. Because if it increments to 2, that means we can still get the result back. But it stays at 1. If it stays at 1, that means we don't have a chance to fix it. Okay. So are there any other questions?
Yeah,
Oh,
question.
yep.
In what we've gone through this morning, does it involve any blocks that are not in 1.0?
I think they're all in 1.0. I think App Inventor 1 has all of these blocks that we used this morning, except for local variables and stuff like that. That part is missing from version 1 altogether.
Well, it does. We could find out by trying to run this 1.0, upload this to 1.0.
You cannot cross versions. Projects that you have done in version 2 does not upload to version 1 and vice versa. But you can write a very simple app in version 1 to do it.
To 1.0 at all?
Nope, not at all, unfortunately.
Why not?
Because the formats are different. So version 1 doesn't know how to handle some of the things in version 2, and version 2 is not backward compatible with version 1 also, which is really kind of, that bothers me a little bit, because, backward compatibility would be nice so that people can port your project from version 1 to version 2, but no, they did not maintain any backward compatibility.
You may be able to save the on-screen elements, but your code be gone.
Yeah, so that's the most important part. The screen is actually usually the lesser of the issue. It's more of the code part that is important. Maybe if someone can actually parse the XML file for the code, can find a way to do the conversion. I have not really looked into that yet. All right, so now this is all done. We have 7 minutes of time left. So what I'll do is I go back to my own homework assignment and see how we can limit the steering. Okay, to a certain range. Yep.
I got the same problem.
Okay.
So I want to show.
Oh, do you have a solution?
No, I mean.
In version 1?
Everything is gone on this message.
Oh, okay, I see. This is the blocks area did not load properly. Changes to the blocks for screen blah 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 will not be saved.
And I found some people have the same problem.
Okay. When we're done with the lecture, I want to see how much stuff we have, in that screen, and see whether that's an issue. Because this project actually has quite a bit of code already, and I have not ran into any problems, so I don't know what is triggering that problem to happen. How much stuff do you have to get it to have problems? Because this code is actually pretty chunky. It's pretty big already.
Maybe because I have at home I have my project open on the start.
But I do the same thing too. Sometimes I'm not careful. When I'm careful, I would try to close, one side before I open up on the other side. But sometimes I'm not careful. I would have both screens open at the same time, and I have not run into that problem yet.
Do they both work at the same time, or does it terminate the other session?
It does not terminate the other side. So I'm guessing it updates the other side.
So it just has the local snapshot up, saves that. Then they're both saving their saving.
That's
local.
a really good question. Okay, so does everybody understand the issue? Now, because App Inventor is cloud-based, that means you can open up the project from, home, from work, and from here all at the same time. So the question is, if you open the same project from 3 different browsers on 3 different computers, if you make changes on one, does it make the changes to all 3, or each one has its own cached version of the same project? If each one has its own cached version of the same project, you can run into a problem of they are trying to clobber each other. If each one is updated by whatever is already stored in cloud, then it's okay because everything is in sync. Okay, so we can test it too. Okay, because I can open it up with 2 different browsers on the same project, make changes to one, and see if the other one sees the changes that I have just made. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do here. Yep.
I also wonder if they're only updating pieces or they're uploading the whole project back.
Yep. All right, so we'll go ahead and give it a try. Okay, so this is Google Chrome. I'm going to start a new browser, or I have one started already, over here, and I'm going to start new blocks dot app inventor MIT edu. And it's always nice to test all of this stuff here with a toy project before you actually do it, with your real project. And I was using Dr. Tag as a default. Okay, it has to be the same project. Otherwise, it's not. It won't show you the effects. So I want to go back to screen main. Go to I think I saw a screen opening. I just clicked too fast. Okay, the blocks area did not load properly.
Yeah, this
okay,
message.
that's it.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's because you open up the same project from 2 different locations.
Will the error go away if you close out the other project?
That's interesting.
Well, let's give it a try. I'm putting my own project at risk.
You have a checkpoint, right?
Hmm?
A checkpoint to make a different copy of it?
Checkpoint?
Yeah.
This one I didn't really make any significant changes,
Oh.
so it's okay to lose something.
Can you try based on 2 different machines? Because I mean, isn't a good chunk of the blocks that are this is
Yeah, well, we'll go ahead and refresh it. Open it again. It only pops up when you're in the blocks editor too, so.
Is your computer at home still running right now?
Yeah.
Then I guess that's the issue.
That's it. This is it. Yep. It still complains about it because, I think okay, let me see if I have to sign out entirely. Or whether that even helps. Or whether I have to restart this site entirely to fix that problem. Okay, it just popped up that message. So that means on this side, I have to go to my projects and probably sign out from this side altogether, sign back in, and that might resolve the issue.
That will be good, but if that doesn't resolve,
Sorry?
if it doesn't resolve,
Then
Yeah.
at least we know what to report.
yeah.
Yep, exactly.
And your project is gone.
Uh-oh, it won't even bring that page up. There we go. Same thing. It's still complaining. Close
It
the
was
browser.
there. It was there, then it just disappeared.
Yeah. It's. I have to close the browser and then restart the browser and see if it helps. New blocks. Oh, okay. It stored a cookie. That's why I didn't have to sign in again. Yep, it popped up a little message. Let's go to screen main.
Yeah.
Yep, same thing. Now, if I close this one and use Google Chrome, let's see if it has the same problem. And Google Chrome works faster. It's actually significantly faster. No problem on this side. So it's always the second instance that is having issues. The first instance, as soon as I come back here, log back in, doesn't have an issue at all.
Maybe it's using a cached local copy. You have to clear temporary internet files.
But I closed the other browser.
You closed it, but it may still have
Cookies.
cookies and saved files that says like it's not modified, so it doesn't reload it.
Yep. So that means, in your case, you might need to clear the cookies, too, when you, try to log in again.
Okay.
Yep. It could be an issue with the browser too. You know, were you using Firefox at home, or are you using Firefox right now?
At home and here.
Okay, it can be a Firefox. I mean, can be a browser side issue because JavaScript is browser dependent. So if it has a bug related to JavaScript, it is possible for the bug to show up on certain browsers but not others. Yep, but it's kind of a bummer. But at least we know now, it's related to open up the project from multiple locations, so we can, find out how to fix that problem. Any other issues that you guys run into? That's a good one. I mean, I really like solving problems like that. What I'll do is I'm going to do the same thing, but in Google Chrome. So I will start up two Google Chromes using different profiles. And how do we do that? I cannot remember. Oh, I think I clicked the
would work.
Hmm?
Incognito would work because it
Incognito.
separates cookies out.
Okay, so we'll go new blocks, sign in. This is an interesting experiment because we are doing exactly the same thing, except we are using the same browser in this case, but the cookies are independent. It's behaving differently already because the other one started to complain as soon as we got in, and this one doesn't complain at all. So that might be a browser related issue too, in addition to signing in from multiple places. Now the question is, now that we have both screens open, okay, they're synced at the same place. So the question is, what if I do something here? So I'll just insert a text box here and then switch back and forth, and the other one doesn't get updated. Save it. And then the other one doesn't get updated. So it's not a very good idea to do that. We are at the same place in both browsers, but one has the text box block, the other one does not have the text block. So when you're working on projects, it's probably a good idea to close one before you start on the other one. Now, what if I switch from designer back to blocks here? Would it get updated? Nope. It has a cached version in the browser itself, and it doesn't get updated from the remote side.
What if you refresh the page? Refresh the page.
Refresh the page. I think if you refresh the page, it will go back to the project page. Yep. And when we're in the project page, we go back to blogs, and this is on the main screen, and it still doesn't get it. But the other side, always has it.
Maybe when you change screens or whatever, you actually saved it at that point, and you're just reliving the saved earlier version.
Possibly. But the point, that is the most important part is, it can cause problems.
It's just not a good idea, period.
Yeah, not a good idea. It's not like Google Documents where you can open it up from multiple places and they can keep track of all of those, changes at the same time. This one is really designed to be edited from one place, but not from multiple, sessions. All right. Now that we know it, it's good. It's like G.I. Joe. Knowing is half the battle. All right. Well, we are running out of time today. I still haven't got time to talk about the solution to the steering problem that you guys have to deal with. So I will talk about that next time. But I can give you an idea of how to deal with that problem. Okay. So when you're steering, okay, so I'm going to draw a steering wheel here. This is just a concept. Okay, I'll actually code it next time. Okay. So when you're steering, your drag event reports both the current location as well as the previous location. Okay, that's one of the nice things about the drag event. So let's say this is the previous location and this is the current location. Okay, so what you can do, or not new, current. Okay, so what you do is you calculate the angle. Okay, so we'll call this theta 1 and we'll call this theta 2. So you basically calculate the rotation for the previous point as well as the rotation for the current point. Okay. If the current point is already past a particular threshold, okay, then you can basically say, okay, we are not going to get past that point, so we'll basically keep the steering wheel at a locked position over here. Am I doing okay so far? So what if this keeps dragging? What if this becomes the previous as you continue to try to steer, and this one becomes the current? It's the same thing. You don't change the rotation of the steering wheel itself anymore. You just basically say, we are already beyond, that particular, angle. So from here on, we're not going to make any changes. Am I making any sense? But what if, this is getting past the 90 degree? What if, you're going from here to here? This is basically close to 180 degrees. This is negative 180 degrees of a negative value. So what you need to do in that case is not to make the steering wheel cross over to the other side. Now how can you make the steering wheel not to cross over to the other side? Well, you set a boundary, but the boundary is not going to help you because okay, there are two ways to interpret the event going from here to here. Okay, one way to interpret is you just steer it. You just try to steer it a little bit this way. What is the other interpretation?
This way?
You just flung it really fast in the opposite direction. Okay, but it's not really probable that you will flung it all the way around like that in the opposite direction. So that means you have to look at the actual angle change and decide how to interpret that particular angle change, and then do the bound checking accordingly. Okay. It can all be done with conditional statements. It's just how do you make that decision tree that is important. Yep.
I did that in my project.
Exactly that. Okay, very good. So next time I'll talk
use,
about it.
I like 90 degree and minus 90 degree.
Okay. All right. So next time, I'll talk about the solution to that. Because you need to track a few things in order to make this work, and also understand that sometimes you can go from 180 degrees or close to 180 to negative 180, like in one single update. So the question is, how do you know it's not turning in this direction real fast? Instead, it's just turning a few more degrees in that direction, and then also do the bound checking at the same time. So we'll talk about this next time. It's all done by conditional statements and variables to help you keep track of various things. The variables are already there for the most part. It's really just a matter of interpreting the changes, how much change or angular change is being done to the steering wheel, and then interpret it correctly and then do a bound checking based on that. All right, so the lecture is done. I do want to make sure that everybody is getting started with your project, and based on the tools that we have learned so far, you might need to make adjustments to what you originally planned to do.
I did.
You do? All right. So if you want to, you can send me a new project proposal. Like, I'm planning to do it this way now, so I know, an updated version of your proposal. Okay. I think it's better to turn this class into a project class instead of exam-based, so because it really is, it lends itself to, a project more so than it lends itself to a test. Okay, because app writing is really project-based. Okay, so we are halfway through the semester. As this is really quick. Someone told me today along the in the hallway and say, "Woohoo! It's second 8 week already. We're halfway there." And I was going like, "No, I don't want to be halfway done. I want this to be like quarter way done. So I have another 3 quarters to go." So are you guys thinking about your project? You guys think your project is doable? Can be done? How many people are familiar with the concept of arrays already? Okay, sort of. Okay, so what I'll do is I'm going to talk about arrays just a little bit, which is, lists are more than arrays. So we have already encountered concepts like that already. But it's a really useful concept. You can implement a lot of algorithms using arrays that can be useful. So that's what we'll do next. I have pretty much covered, all of the material that is in the curriculum and can be done in App Inventor. Okay, I was looking into how to do background tasks or background apps in App Inventor, and there's no way to do it just yet. Okay, which is a bummer because that can be very helpful. But for everything that is originally in the syllabus, it's already pretty much done. Except for the media stuff, which are pretty easy to do. Okay.
Question?
Yep.
About the projects, when you look at the proposals, do you ever have to tell anybody this can't be done?
This can't be done?
Yeah, with the App Inventor. Is
Certain
that response to anybody?
Yes. That was. I think I responded to yours too.
No, you didn't. Mine is too simple-minded.
Okay. There was one project that was too difficult. I think one person is not here today, so. But the project was to do some kind of signal processing to evaluate, guitars or the sound quality of guitars, and that's really, really hard to do using, an app, because it has, signal processing. You need to know a lot of math to do it.
You need to have a lot of functions.
A lot of functions, math stuff, Fourier transform and stuff like that. So my suggestion to change the project was simple. Do a recording and basically make the app so that you have one person to do the recording and request a evaluation, and then you have another person as the evaluator to replay the clips and then just type in the comments. So now you have a human instead of a program to do the actual evaluation. The app is nothing more than just a recorder to allow people to say, okay, this is recording for this guitar, this is a recording for this guitar, and then you just store up a bunch of requests, and then the other person can listen to the sound and then type in the feedback, and that's it. That makes it a fairly doable project.
Question?
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to grade the projects on complexity and difficulty?
I will grade the
Invention?
project. I will grade the project based on whether it has the features that I want you guys to include. So I will give you a laundry list of things that I think you guys should include in the project.
When do we get that list?
Pretty soon. I think we have just finished all of the topics that I want to make sure that you guys understand. So the use of buttons, list pickers, lists, passing information from one screen to the next using TinyDB. So all of those, would be things that I want you guys to include in one way or another. And in some cases, you can have a disjunction, like you can pick this or this for this, but not all of them. So I'll give you a laundry list, a little shopping list.
We'll get that next week or when?
Yeah, next week.
We should have got that list to begin the semester before we devised our project.
But it wouldn't make sense because you look at that list, and that's before we even talk about the concept, right? You can look at the list and go like, well, I'm not sure what this is or what that is. But now it makes sense, okay? Because now you can actually look at my app and see how certain things are done, and you're more than welcome to borrow some code or concept from my app. And I'll be more than willing to help out people who want to go beyond what is discussed in class. Like if you want to interact with your website, okay, in a certain way, I can also help you guys with that too. But that's but interacting with the website inside an app is actually outside of the syllabus or the range of topics in this class.
So like fetching data.
Yeah. Yeah, but you can use the web component to do it. That really is the best way to do it, especially if you already know how to do PHP programming on the other side, because now you have control on both sides. Then you have a lot more. There's a lot more that you can do. Any other questions? Yep.
Does App Inventor support wildcards for like text comparison or seeing if this?
Like regular expression?
Yeah.
No, not that I know of. It doesn't mean you cannot write your own subroutine to do that. No, none that I know of. It depends on how difficult you want it to be? Are you talking about true regular expression or just
Yeah, I was thinking I may want to like dig into some HTML code that's already pre-format or pre-done. I can't change it and extract certain bits of code.